So that's the science behind Fast and Furious?
The setup for a game of Fast and Furious Highway Heist. This is a 3-player setup, but there are components over here for a 4th player that we're just not going to use for the example. There are also 6 characters, so 3 unused characters that come in the box with different stats, different special abilities. You maybe like them from the movies or something. This is the kind of general layout here, but you'll notice that there are 3 different scenarios. There is the tank assault, there is the semi-heist, and there's the chopper takedown. I'll talk very briefly about what all of those are, but I'm going to give you a general idea of what the rules are first. This is a cooperative game where each player will get to activate their character in their order of their choosing each round. They'll get to take 2 actions, and then they will roll the enemy die. Your actions can be to drive, to leap, to try and ram an enemy SUV, to force them to move them in different places, to shake an enemy pin who might have jumped on top of your vehicle, to brawl them if your own character pin is on top of a car with an enemy pin, to hijack an SUV if your enemy pin is on another vehicle. You can also attempt to hijack their SUV, meaning that instead of driving your exotic supercar, you have a hijacked SUV. Also important, if your car explodes. The last action that you can take on your turn is that you can grab an extra one of these NOS tokens. That must be the last thing that you do. So basically what you're doing though is every time that you drive, you can move up to your speed limit. You'll see there are different stats here. So Dominic might be able to drive alongside, he starts in his car. So for a drive action, he can move up alongside one of these cars here. Then he could, as his second action, take the Ram SUV. If he does that, he looks at his speed, the matching type of skill, and he's got 5 speed, meaning that he will roll 5 dice. And he's looking for this number of successes, usually 3 or maybe 2 successes. These green dots are successes. If Dominic did not roll enough successes, in this case, he could spend a NOS token to turn all of these NOS symbols into successes. Also, each character and car have their own special abilities, so make sure to pay attention to rerolls or additional successes or free actions per turn. When you successfully ram an SUV, it'll flip over onto its side and it will become a wreck. At the end of the round, wrecks will slide towards the west. There are also other actions you can take, like forcing a car to move. If you succeed at a control check on a force action, Dominic gets his reroll. Wha-boom! You can force an enemy SUV, to move up to 2 spaces, maybe positioning them, say, to ram into the tank. You can, of course, jump out of your car in true Fast and Furious action style. You can jump into an enemy SUV. You can jump on top of the tank. You can fight people. You can do all of these different actions, all for the purpose of completing whatever the general scenario is. So let's talk about each scenario. In the tank assault scenario, which is the recommended first scenario because it is, strangely, the simplest, players are going to be trying to destroy the tank that is racing down the highway. In order to do this, players will have to try and maneuver these enemy SUVs in front of the vehicle and then take that Ram SUV action to flip them over to the wreck side. And then the wrecks at the end of each round will shoot back 4 spaces. If a wreck ever were to crash into the tank, it'll take 1 damage. And depending on 2, 3, or 4 players, the tank will start with a different amount of health. Each scenario has its own specific enemy deck, and then its own stunts. Players can also perform a stunt by taking the associated type of skill check and looking for that correct number of successes in order to perform this stunt if this particular condition is met. This condition might be to surround 2 enemy vehicles, then you can fling one of these enemy SUV vehicles directly into the tank, causing it a damage. At the end of a player's turn, as I noted, you're supposed to flip this to the exhausted side and then roll the enemy die. This is dependent on each scenario. You roll the enemy die, and either the other enemy SUVs will converge on the active player to try and attack them, or if there are any of these enemy pegs on top of a player's car, they will try to jump over there, or they'll try to beat up their car, damaging it. And then there are also scenario-specific things. In this case, the tank would move 1 space south, or the tank would move 1 space north. And then anything that shows the skull means that the players have to reveal one of the enemy cards. When an enemy card is revealed, certain things will happen. More enemy SUVs will pop onto the map, pegs will pop out and try and jump on players' cars, or the tank, in this case, will fire at players that are not within a single space of it, and the players will have to absorb damage. But every character also has a defense value, so they can roll against damage to prevent it. Eventually, as the die gets rolled more, another card will get revealed, and cards will shift over, and then this stuff will happen, and then another time, the cards will shift over, and then this activation will happen, phase 3. So the tank might fire, enemy SUVs will crash into other players, and then you'll still reveal a card and do the reveal effects. Players win this scenario by simply reducing the tank's health to 0. In the semi-heist scenario, players will follow the instructions with some special rules in here. This is the recommended second scenario because it'll add on to some of the rules found in the tank. Now, in this case, you're not trying to actually damage the truck, you're trying to steal the goods tokens that are found inside of it. To do so, players will have to drive their vehicles up alongside the truck, the semi-truck. They'll have to jump out of the vehicle and jump onto the semi, moving to the back space over here, fighting enemy tokens that might pop up and choose to fight you as well. And in this case, there are, instead of this being the truck's health, these are shotgun shells that the driver is trying to shoot at you, and you have to jump off the truck. Why do you want to be up here? Because the tail of the truck actually will open up. And when this is open, the player who is up here can toss these crates to players who are in these hind 3 spaces right behind the SUV. Players will win the scenario if each car, which is not destroyed, has at least 2 crates of possessions on it, and then race over to the far side of the board. One thing worth mentioning right now is that when players' vehicles are damaged and destroyed, they don't lose the game. They're simply destroyed. The player peg jumps out in miraculous fashion and jumps onto an enemy SUV. That player may then try to use one of these skill checks to take over the SUV. Thus, they'll take one of these color indicator tokens, and now that is that player's vehicle. And then that vehicle will come back as a hijacked SUV at full health, and then players will be able to still win this scenario, but this particular SUV then has to get 2 more of these tokens in it and race to the end. And here's the third scenario that comes in Fast and Furious Highway Heist, the chopper takedown. Some guy named Shaw has a helicopter, and you have to protect this person, whose name is Ramsey. Ramsey will start in one of the player's vehicles, any of them, and that player's vehicle cannot be destroyed, else the players will immediately lose the game. Now, just to kind of cover how the game ends, at the end of every round, after all players have activated and the wrecks move to the side, players will flip another one of these stunts over and put any of these NOS tokens on there, because if a player performs one of these stunts, they get the NOS token off of the stunt card to their player board. But this is also the timer of the game. The level 3 card will eventually come out, and if the level 3 card falls off the side of the board, the players have lost. Other than that, players can have their vehicles explode and everything, and just like in the real movies, nobody dies, just the cars get destroyed. But in the chopper takedown, there is an extra loss condition, which is the car in which Ramsey is in is destroyed. This is important because that car will be targeted by the chopper, who has this additional track over here, which is the amount of damage that the rocket launchers will do at it. The longer Ramsey stays in the same car, the more that track will increase and try to blow up that car. So players have extra actions like tossing her around from one car to the other so that the targeting computer has a harder time. You'll notice that there is both Shaw's vehicle, a reinforced vehicle, as well as the actual helicopter, which is on this floating stand. So in this case, players will win the scenario by both destroying Shaw's car as well as the support helicopter. How do they do that? Well, they'll have to take actions to try and get SUVs behind it, turn them into wrecks, and then use the wrecks as ramps. A special action is to take a drive action, use a ramp, and then crash their car into the helicopter, causing it 1 damage. And so then the chopper will reduce in strength. Now, Shaw's vehicle is a little different. You can't just ram it like you would a normal SUV. Your player character has to jump out of your car, land on top of another car, and use a special swerving action to distract this driver so that they crash into Shaw's car, thus causing it a damage. And of course, all of these stunts always help try and fulfill some of the conditions as well. The level 3 cards are always some sort of long shot alternate way to victory. Try to cause Shaw's car, in this case, to jump up a wrecked vehicle as a ramp and blow up the helicopter at the same time. So those are the 3 scenarios that are found in Fast and Furious Highway Heist.
Well, they definitely got the theme down on this.
100%. This game is very thematic feeling, even to a person like me who has actually not seen a single Fast and Furious movie, to tell you the truth.
I mean, can you include Hobbs and Shaw?
I don't.
They defy physics in that too.
Well, I watched that movie very unfortunately. But, so here's the thing. These are silly franchise movies. They're big blockbuster events, and this kind of feels like that. They have the 3 scenarios that all feel different, and they all feel like doing some big, ridiculous task. I like that. It's pretty fun.
They're pretty over the top. The helicopter, right? No, they're pretty over top stunt wise, but I get that that's what the movies are, and I get that it was probably a lot of fun to make this game.
I 100% have to feel that way. Like the design team of this, Prospero Hall, has also done other really good IP licensed kind of themed games. Disney Villainous is very popular, and Horrified, the cooperative game. This one is not clean of a system. This one is thematic of a system.
Yes.
And like you said, I think they must have had fun making it because the stunts that you can pull are over the top and the actions are so silly. And there's so many laughable moments.
And nobody falls off of a car. You just hop onto the next one 80 feet away. Like, yeah.
It feels like those big over-the-top action movies. So I think it's very fun as a player to kind of get caught up in that. And in all of the inelegancies of the rules, I'm kind of forgiving of it because I'm laughing as I'm playing the game.
Because you're rolling over cars and you're knocking helicopters out of the sky, yeah.
Yes.
I get that. There are a couple things mechanically that I think could have been done a little bit better. I think the big one is the die. So after every turn, you roll that die and you see what bad stuff happens. Sometimes nothing happens because it just really doesn't apply. The SUVs are too far away, so they can't really attack you. So they get closer to you, but other than that, or maybe there's no SUVs on the board and then they pop out. But sometimes there's no people on the card. The cars around. It just, I don't know. It doesn't always apply to the situation, and sometimes the board feels a bit sparse.
Sometimes you will have an easier game if you don't roll that skull side and make more of those event cards pop out, because those event cards really make the game difficult. Event cards will make a person, an enemy on top of the tank, repair the tank, and that really slows you down. But if you never get one of those event cards pop out because you roll the die and none of the skulls show up, then the game becomes a little bit too easy, I think.
And it can have the opposite problem of if you're just rolling those skulls every round, then you're just getting beat up.
Yeah.
And that's hard.
So maybe like an event deck would have been like a smoother way so that you have a more equilibrious distribution of the events. But
of the random, yeah.
But that's also not what this game is, you know, and yeah, so mechanically I think it's less pure than I prefer most of my cooperative games to be. It's kind of loosey, you know, you want to do an action, you roll the dice, and the dice say no. But there is some mitigation. There's a lot of smart design, and I think the reason that I like this, that I actually have a very favorable opinion of it, is because all of it is intentional design. It's intending to feel like the Fast and Furious big over-the-top action movies, and you can't do that with a clean system. It has to be a very thematic, very specific kind of rules-regulated system like this.
Yeah, and I can definitely get that. And I like the player powers and the cars, and I appreciate that they're separate. That way, when you do climb onto your car, you only have your player powers and not your car powers.
Yes, Kit, the talking car powers. Oh, it's a very interesting game. But I think that one of the things is you asked this to me after we played it. Who is this game for, right?
It's a real question I have. Yeah. So I wonder who this is for, because these movies are obviously for adults, and
And teenage boys.
Teenage, sure.
Want cars
adults,
to
teenagers,
boom, boom.
whatever.
Yeah, explode.
But an older crowd, right? And the game is full of these little cars that a little kid would want to play with. It's full of fun, crazy explosions that kids would want to play with. And it's a cooperative game. And in general, cooperative games tend to be better with a younger crowd. But then there's so much text on the stunt cards. And there's just a lot of that like vocabulary and stuff going on. So I wonder who this is for, because it looks juvenile in a lot of ways because it looks like a toy.
It's very toyetic. The semi-truck actually popping open.
Yeah.
Very toyetic.
Yeah, very toy-like. But at the same time, I don't know if I'd play it with my 7, 8, 9-year-old because of the amount of text that is on the stunts that come out. They change every round. There's just a lot of reading that goes on and a lot of explaining specific things. The car has to be directly behind an SUV to get this stunt to move with another SUV within line of sight, within, there's just a lot of intricacies that it just makes me wonder, who is this game meant for? Who did they design it for?
And it's not that it's hard. In fact,
it's
almost
not.
Most of the game is very simple, but it does have a lot of specific rules. The first 5 pages of the rule book, right after the contents, after the components, is core terms to understand. Because you have to understand the difference between being in the driver's seat versus being on top of the car and moving your peg around, and what defines a wreck, what 3 things trigger when a wreck happens, and the end of there's a lot of those core concepts that you read the rule book, you think, oh, is this going to be a complicated game? Then you read the actual, what does a turn look like? Do 2 actions, roll the bad guy die. It's a very simple game in all of those senses. I think... Okay, so I want to clarify something I said earlier. Teenage boys, right? That's a generalization. I made a generalization about what those movies are about. But I think that's also a decent target audience. I think the age of interest for this game is going to skew a little bit older and a little bit sillier, and that's okay. Not that serious gamers couldn't also enjoy this, but I think that the target is going to be people who like the action franchise, see this box cover at Target and say, come on, let's try this out,
Yeah.
I'm a little worried, a little to your point of who's this for, that the 5 pages of core concept rules is going to intimidate
It's going to be a little too much for a 12-year-old that the mom says, hey, I got you this Christmas present. I hate games, but you like them. Here, read this.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think if you get past that, it's not difficult. It is just verbose. It's wordy. But
there's a real game there.
There's a real game there, and it's really fun and silly and laughable.
And I think you have to approach it with that point of, I'm playing this for that feel and that experience, not I'm playing it for the mechanisms.
There's 100%, has to be true, that this is not a game that was just kind of in development somewhere, and they said, hey, the Fast and Furious license is available to us, right? This is a Fast and Furious game.
It is. It has that feel. You literally feel like those players as you're hopping around on car roofs and stealing stuff out of the back of semis.
And launching your car into helicopters. It's so over the top. I like this one a lot, actually.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if we'll keep playing it because we played all of the scenarios, but we also played all 3 scenarios last night. Like, I played this a few times separately, and then the 2 of us played it back to back to back.
It's not a long game.
It's not, yeah.
It's not a long game. It's not an exhausting game. It doesn't wear you out. Would I normally play them back to back? Probably not.
No, but I was excited enough. I was having enough fun that even doing this, for work, for the review, I was like, this is really cool. And you know what? I like it enough that if someone a few weeks from now says, hey, Chris, can you teach me Fast and Furious? Yeah, I can. And I would have fun playing it again.
Yeah. It's interesting because I feel like I played it and I'm good. I don't feel like I ever need to play it again. I experienced what there was. If an expansion came out, I don't know if I would be dying to play it.
The submarine expansion? You have to jump the submarine over Godzilla. And,
yeah, that one. As he's breathing his laser mouth into the submarine.
So I think that this discussion is going to tie into our scores here. Yes. I'm giving this game a 7.5. I really like it. I give it a seal of approval because it is both fun and funny. I think it wraps that theme perfectly around it. I had a lot of fun.
And I'm going to give it a 6.5 because I didn't feel like it was a game for a big enough audience, and I felt like it didn't add much to the general cooperative
body of works.
Yeah, body of works out there. Like, I felt like it wasn't anything really new, so I'd rather just play some of the games that I have.
And also, a lot of the cooperative games that are a little bit sillier, we want to try and play more with our kid, more as in a family setting. And this one, like I said, I think it's going to skew a little bit older for its target.
But I do think it was still a lot of fun.
Well, there you go. That's our thoughts on Fast and Furious Highway Heist.
We're Chris and Wendy. Thanks for watching The Dice Tower.